in a bygone era, there was a circumstance where the NAIA Division II championship game, and I know there's a whole big difference between historically the NAIA Division II. I don't even think Carson Newman ever played it. I could be wrong against that. But anyway, the NAIA Division II game used to not have an overtime. And you'd have, I think there were 4 times where there were co-champions in NAIA Division II. I despise college football overtime. Not that I'm here going to go, the more the merrier and all this, but in some ways you would have in this case, an argument now. Central Florida wants to say that they're the national champion now. Okay, sure. Yeah, thanks. Thank you for your participation. Sure, you think you do, and just about no one else does. They did get, I believe it was 6 votes in the top 25 final poll. Central Florida did, but I'm sorry. No, I mean, the schedule is not the same. You cannot make the comparison. And this is what it goes into, and I think some of the greatness of the Alabama dynasty is that, where does that, how do you know if they don't play on the field or anything? Please, they beat Auburn and Alabama didn't. No, okay, so now head-to-head is, common opponents and that circumstances, so by this measure, I don't know. Pitt's better than Notre Dame this year. I mean, they beat Miami and Notre Dame didn't. So that means that Pitt is better than LSU this year, right? If you want to go with that argument, I just don't see it. I think that we all know that the SEC is better than the American. I do understand that Central Florida won all their games, but I mean, they're winning them against Memphis, who may have ranked number 24, but that's, they're beating an Auburn team that doesn't want to be there. They're nothing against Riley Ferguson, but honestly, eye test, and I mean, Riley Ferguson is the one that got away from Tennessee football. You think he's better than Jake Fromm? You think he's going to wind up better than Jake Fromm? You think he's going to wind up better than even Jalen Hurts, who's benched last night? Really? Anyway, that's the take here on Tri-City Sports Now, and I'll go a little bit further with that, I guess. But I want to go and I want to talk a little bit. Bear Bryant. Now Nick Saban has as many national championships as Bear Bryant does. Saban, who can be surly, who can be, really the guy you really don't want to hear from in press conferences, had something perhaps even eloquent to say about Bear Bryant after winning his 6th national championship. Remember, one of those was at LSU.
It's just about me, and I think Coach Bryant is probably the best coach of all time because of the longevity of his tenure as a coach and the way he changed.
It's changed. I know that, certainly he was big on bringing integration into Alabama, although it had already started in the SEC with schools like Kentucky and Tennessee. But yeah, there was the old adage that he scheduled a game against Southern California to basically get beat and show people, look, I've got to recruit black athletes. It's 1970 for crying out loud. I mean, this is absurd. And a lot of people think that that's what did it. Anyway, so it changes in that regard. Also, look, Bear Bryant was a really tough coach. But yeah, he also developed some quarterbacks. He had 3 Pro Football Hall of Famers. Think about this: Starr, Namath, as well as Stabler. I mean, right now, Alabama has more Hall of Fame quarterbacks than Purdue, who I think is going to get a third with Drew Brees, don't get me wrong, to join Len Dawson and Bob Greasy, but even so, Nick Saban, let's see, he's talked a little bit about the future, and he was non-committal when he said, hey, now you got 6 national titles and you're 60-something, and all the your legacy is kind of secured. What about your future here? And this is what he had to say about that.
I hadn't really thought about it, to be honest with you. I mean, did some thinking about next year's team. talked to players after the game, 7 of them that may consider going out for the draft. Probably have several that should, and probably have several that shouldn't, from a business perspective. We got a Thursday meeting as a team to get guys back in school and get them back on the right track to do what they have to do and lay out a little calendar for what they need to do the next couple months. But really hadn't thought too much about that.
Now, other things with Nick Saban to discuss. He did say, well, I can't be here forever. Of course, nobody can.
These are things that I know that I cannot do forever. But there's certainly things that I have enjoyed and hope I can continue to enjoy in the future.
So he'll be back. I'll give you one thing to be scared about, Vols fans. What if Jeremy Pruitt is successful at Tennessee? What if these JUCOs he brings in, what if he turns it around right now? I mean, I think he's got a big rebuilding project going on. I mean, I do think, Ty Chandler could be a nice back, but I don't really like the quarterback situation. Trey Smith's a good, guy up front, but you're not going to, win an SEC championship based on one lineman up front, this sort of thing. I do think that the guys leaving early for the draft are replaceable, but you're still talking about a 4-8 team and a lot of guys coming back from a 4-8 team against a schedule that gets tougher next year. And I don't think there's any, instead of Georgia Tech, 5-6 this past year, West Virginia, projected by one, poll that's out. I guess not a poll, it's a prediction, but one preseason prediction for 2018 that's already out, picked to finish 10th in the country. And I would say that West Virginia is probably a little more prestigious of a program than Georgia Tech. You look at, I know that this year Tennessee had to play LSU at home. Next year they got to play Auburn. I think it's on the road too. That gets tougher. You still have Alabama. In fact, I looked at it, and in one, and I'll get to this, a projected top 25 for next year, Tennessee has to play 5 teams in a preseason top 25 next year on their schedule. 4 in the SEC. And there's still, Drew Lock admittedly coming to Knoxville instead of at home in Columbia, but I don't think that's that big of a deal. They got to travel to Vanderbilt. Now that's suddenly a tough game, So the program, there's a lot of rebuilding that has to happen. What if Jeremy Pruitt does do it? It's not unfathomable. Nick Saban, let's say he gets that 7th national championship 2 years from now. And by this time, Jeremy Pruitt has Tennessee right up there competing for SEC championships. Here's the horrible thing for Vols fans. Pruitt would obviously be the number 1 candidate to be the Alabama coach, let's say, in 2021. Absolutely he would. Kirby Smart isn't going to be leaving his alma mater, but Pruitt would easily return to his. And that's something that should scare Vols fans a lot. People didn't like Derek Dooley because he lost. If he won, I could have seen him becoming the Georgia coach. Who's his father? Couldn't you see Jeremy Pruitt, success he had this year, returning to Alabama if, let's say, in a year or two, say 2019 or 2020, Tennessee is suddenly, once again, 9-3, 10-2, as the fans here expect them to be? Oh, he'd be the Alabama coach then if Saban wanted to retire. There's no question about it. Question is, would the program then be in such a position, Tennessee, where it could continue to win from such laurels? And possibly it could. But the thing is, it would still be under the thumb of Alabama, which it has been for the last 11 years. Then again, for the last 9 years or so, all of college football seems to have been under the thumb of Alabama. Let's go back. This was, I know the big, the quarterback change at halftime. Some people were calling for it at the beginning of the game, saying, hey, it's no guarantee that Hurts is going to be the quarterback for the entire national championship game. And people were, really? What? 17-1 touchdown interception ratio? They may pull him as Jalen Hurts here. I mean, come on. Why would you pull? Of course, he was the good teammate. On the sideline during the second half, Nick Saban had this to say about who's going to be the Crimson Tide's quarterback next year.
Well, look, we have two good quarterbacks on our team, no doubt. Both of them made a great contribution to the success of the team this year. And, I think that we haven't really made a decision about that. I don't think it's imperative that we make one right now. We've got two fine young men who really respect each other and have worked hard to help each other all year long, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to do that in the future.
Here's, though, the quote from Nick Saban that you just got to love here. Listen to this.
I guess why not? I mean, what do we work for all year? What do we put on all this time? These players run 110s. They go through summer conditioning. They come to work every day during the season, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They put a lot into this. They have goals and aspirations and things that they want to accomplish. And I was happy for the players.
That's as happy as he gets? Droopy got more excited than Nick Saban. Remember that? No, what? I'm happy. I know all of my high culture does not come from Bugs Bunny cartoons as Jerry Seinfeld's high culture came from, but rather Woody Woodpecker for me. I fear Buzz Buzzard, that sort of thing. Always liked Andy Panda, and all that. But now, let's see here. I do think, and I've talked about this, that I believe Georgia is going to become a real powerhouse in college football. This won't be their only time in the national championship game. Kirby Smart spoke of it as well. In fact, Sony Michel talked about setting a standard in Athens.
We want to have a DACA compromise.
Well, no, that's not it. Actually, there's a problem with the computer right here. Just when I click the button, it goes and returns to, hey, look, there's a news story, and that's what you heard right there. So let's go try this once more. This was Sony Michel talking about setting a standard at the University of Georgia.
A lot. We try to set the standard high so our younger guys can know, where to take it from here. We fell short today, and I think guys that's coming back understand what it's going to take plus more to get back here.
Okay, Michelle is going to be going into the NFL, so will Nick Chubb. Roquan Smith is projected. I saw him taken 20th in one mock draft. So there's going to be a lot of departures from Georgia. Still, they're bringing in the number one recruiting class, and we're seeing that freshmen are starting and playing right away. Be it Jake Fromm, be it Trey Smith down in Tennessee. I mean, there's a lot of positive feelings for the future for Georgia football, and really positive feelings for the future for Alabama still to this day as well. Years and years ago, way back in the 80s, I remember reading an article, I believe it was written by a Philadelphia sports writer called Jack Faulkner. And he listed what were at the time the top 10 rivalries he felt in sports. Number one was Celtics and 76ers. You think of it, how Bird Magic now historically has become the rivalry of that era in the NBA. But really, at that time, it was Bird Dr. J. It was Larry Bird and Julius Erving. Okay. So that was the pick at that. And he had the same old, Dodgers and Giants, that sort of thing. He had the Browns and Steelers in there. But I remember what he once wrote. He said, a lot of good college rivalries out there, Auburn, Alabama, they're real nice. But they'd pale in comparison if Georgia and Alabama played each other every year. Now think about this. At one time, for about 20 years up until 1965, Georgia and Alabama did play every year in the SEC. But that was the old SEC. That was, I was talking about that when Tulane was in the SEC, for crying out loud. That's when you had a circumstance where, Tennessee didn't play Georgia every year, despite the proximity to the campuses. They played Alabama. They played Ole Miss. They played Kentucky. They played Vanderbilt. They played Auburn every year. Those were there, There were other teams. They didn't play Florida much. They didn't play LSU much. They didn't play Mississippi State. You're getting what I'm trying to get to. There was an unbalanced schedule, if you will, in the SEC in those days. So you had that. You had a circumstance also where that rivalry dissolved somewhat in the 60s. Alabama would win the SEC every year in the 70s. Under Bear Bryant, it seemed. They seemed to win it every year unless Vince Dooley's Bulldogs won it. And certainly early 80s, Vince Dooley's Bulldogs had won it 3 years in a row. I do remember when Georgia and Alabama played each other in 1984, and that was just they kicked off the season. That was the entire talk of the South. Who was Nick Saban's predecessor was Mike Shula. He engineered the game-winning drive in the final 2 minutes in that game, and he became a Crimson Tide legend. He became someone who you'd remember that, and you would consider him to be the coach of the Crimson Tide in the next generation. That's how big that was. I'm not saying the Iron Bowl is going away. I'm not saying the third Saturday in October is going away, although that rivalry certainly with Alabama's dominance is just not what it once was. But I am saying that, if it is Georgia and Alabama every year playing in the SEC championship, or seemingly just about every year, that could be kind of like what Alabama and Florida was in the 1990s. And really with the proximity of the schools, Gainesville is down there in Florida. And not Jacksonville. That's down there in Florida. They don't talk with southern accents in Gainesville, folks. Oh, maybe just a little bit. But not so much anymore. That could be that rivalry that Faulkner once talked about being the best in the South. And, at the time when he wrote about it, it was, like I said, Georgia and Alabama winning the SEC every year. Why don't they play each other more often? Now they could be meeting in the SEC championship every year for quite some time. And then, that could be that sort of playoff rivalry within the same conference that, let's say, Alabama and Clemson have become today. When I come back, I am going to tell you the final top 25 for this year, and then I'm going to tell you the final top 20, the top 25 for next year. Yeah, ESPN has something about it. Tri-City Sports Now comes back after this.
The city streets. Firestone Destination Tires take you anywhere.